Welcome to the Great American Outdoor Show. Thankful that you stopped by to the show. Thankful that you're here for the seminar. I don't know if all of you know, but several years ago this show was canceled. Since then, the NRA's come in, taken it over, and I think they've done a fantastic job. The show seems to be getting better every year. I must admit, it's more of a gun and hunting show, but this is the second year here in this hall, and it's improved, and I think the NRA is doing a great job, so I'm thankful that they're on board with us. My name is Rod Bates, and I'm the owner of Koinonia Guide Service. Oh, one thing I wanted to mention to you regarding the new show format. Have you all seen this new map they got out? You know how you have the big pamphlets? At the entrances, they have these little maps. It'll show you the map of the facility, and on the back side, then it's got all the seminar schedules. So it's real handy. I think that's a great feature that they've added this year. Again, Rod Bates, the owner of Koinonia Guide Service. How many of you are familiar with the term Koinonia? Anybody? Okay, there's a few. For those of you who don't know, Koinonia is the Greek term for fellowship. We are a Christian-based organization here in central Pennsylvania, and I endeavor to run our business based on biblical principles. It's our mission at Koinonia Guide Service to provide you a safe, productive, and memorable experience while exposing you to God's creation. And we do have a wonderful creation here that we fish a lot, and that's the Susquehanna River. I've been blessed in many ways. I've been saved by grace from God and by the blood and righteousness of my Lord Jesus Christ. So that's a major blessing to me. Also, I've been blessed with a wonderful Christian spouse who loves me, supports me, and tolerates the crazy schedule that I keep. We've got two wonderful daughters. Thankfully, Brittany's here today. She's helping with the show. And my oldest daughter, Kristen. So I got a wonderful family life. I'm blessed. I've had the opportunities to fish, take groups to Venezuela, Costa Rica, to Alaska. Through those opportunities, I've had the opportunity to land world record fish. So I've got a wide range of experience. I've got some wonderful national sponsors like Bass Pro Shops, Plano Tackle Systems, Team Catfish, Mercury. So I say that just so you understand that if those major corporations have faith in us and trust in us, you can send your clients with us as well as your family members, and we're going to work hard to show them a good time. We're going to talk about seasons and patterns on the Susquehanna River. Remember, right now the river's frozen solid. As soon as this ice leaves, we're going to be out there and we're going to be fishing. My number one choice would be walleye now, but number two, if people have a bass trip scheduled, we're going to fish for bass. And I'm fortunate to be affiliated with two local Pennsylvania companies. The first in Lewistown, Pennsylvania, is Sick Custom Baits. They make a fantastic spinnerbait, and I'm going to show you that today. They also have some other product lines, and they're down in the 2700 at hook, line, and sinker. They are offering a show discount, so if you see something here you like, make sure you get down there and talk to the boys at Sick Custom Baits and check out their spinnerbaits and the other product lines. The other company we're affiliated with in Pennsylvania is Winco Custom Lures, and they make some wonderful baits as well. And I'm very happy to be able to work and do business with companies in Pennsylvania. We also run Snyder jet boats, which are built in Pennsylvania. So we like to work with the local manufacturers as well. So when this water leaves, we're going to get on, when the ice leaves, we're going to be on the water, and it's going to be 33 degrees, all right? When you're fishing 33-degree water, so when they're cold-blooded, if it's 33 degrees, their body temperature is 33 degrees. That means they're going to be very lethargic. The metabolism's down. They're not going to be aggressive. So although you maybe could catch something on a crankbait, your higher percentage is to be to throw a jig like we're throwing here. This is the Willie Wannabe. In cold water, they're all over this, so it may be hard to demonstrate what I want to show you. But basically in cold water, you want to downsize your bait. So that's a smaller bait. If I'm normally throwing the bigger bait, the bigger version of that, okay, I'm going to downsize in cold water, and I'm going to throw the smaller bait. You also want to fish painfully slow. So So we're going to let that bait hit the bottom. While it's down there, we're just going to wriggle our rod tip a little bit. That bait, if they leave it alone, you'll see it's going to be tail up. When you wriggle that rod tip, it's just going to have a little bit of movement there. That's what you want in cold weather. If you don't get bit, then you want to just drag it. You don't want to lift it and hop it. Unfortunately, it's hard to drag because these guys are all over it. But I want to just drag it a little bit, let it sit, wiggle that rod tip. You cannot fish too slow in the wintertime. If you think you're fishing slow enough, slow it down some more. Classic example, I had a trip and the guys in the back of the boat, and we're fishing a wintering hole, and I'm in the front of the boat, and I'm getting bit, catching a few fish. And I said to Willie, "Are you getting bit?" "No." So I turn around and I watch Willie a little bit. I'm fishing, and he's not getting bit. Fishing the same lure, exact same area. So Willie pulls one of these. Now Willie is a portly guy. Love him to death. Unfortunately, Willie's not with us any longer. Willie sets his rod down, climbs down the bottom of the boat, reaches in his sack, pulls out a sandwich, takes a bite of the sandwich. Willie gets back up on the deck, picks up his rod, he goes, "Oh, I got a fish on there." So I said to Willie, I said, "Did you learn anything?" He goes, "Yeah, if you want to catch fish, you got to eat more." Not quite the lesson I wanted him to learn. So I explained to Willie, "No, the fish told you something right there. They told you to slow it down." So Willie slowed it down, and then he was able to start catching fish and putting fish in the boat. Every time you're on the water, those fish are going to tell you something. They might tell you, "I don't want that lure." They might tell you, "I want it faster." They might tell you, "I want it bigger, I want it smaller." But if you're paying attention, you will learn something from those fish. Our time is very valuable. It's always limited. We got the kids' functions, we got work, we got church, we got all these things going on. So when you're out there in the water, you want to be as productive as you possibly can in that short window that you might have. So these things we're going to talk about today, it doesn't mean it's the only way to catch fish. By far it's not. But what this can do is it can help you put a couple extra fish in the boat at the end of the day. And if you're out there and it's a 6-fish day and you picked up 3 or 4 more, that's pretty substantial. If you're out there and you're whaling on them and you got 40 fish and you only pick up 3 or 4 more, it's not that important to you. But on a short fish day, it's going to be very valuable to you. Winter time, downsize the bait, we've already talked about that. Anytime I'm jig fishing, okay, I'm going to use braided line. Why braided line? Like braided line has no stretch. Therefore, the sensitivity is going to be so much better. The problem is, come on, buddy. There we go. You folks in the front row can probably see this. As that bait comes down, do you see that braided line? Do you see a green line there? Guys in the front row, can you see it? Can you see the lure? The lure? Do you see anything in between? Okay. Then in the front row, they can tell you. That's the value of a fluorocarbon leader. Basically, you've got that braided line coming down, the fluoro disappears, and then you've got a free hanging bait out there. It's going to give you a lot more bites in clear water. In muddy waters, you can get away with fishing straight braid. As a habit of mine, I fish a fluorocarbon leader all the time. Braided line, I'm going to fish 8 to 10 pound test. Fluorocarbon leader is going to be 6 to 8 pound test. Wintertime, fishing painfully slow. Okay, in the wintertime, where are you going to find these fish? If I'm on a strange river, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to be on my outboard motor, and I'm going to be running a shoreline. And I'm going to look for an eddy that's created. It could be created by a tree, a wing wall, an old stone foundation, a rock ledge, okay? When I get to those areas, I'm just going to get up on the trolling motor, and I'm going to hold myself in position. I'm going to throw out there. I'm going to make about 10 casts into that pocket, a pocket with little to no current. If I get bit, I'm going to lower my anchor. Notice I said lower my anchor. I didn't say throw the anchor out, okay? There's a difference. When I lower my anchor, basically I come out, I set it in there, pull off 3 feet of line at a time till it hits bottom, let out line till it's going to hold, and I'll wrap it around the cleat. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people come in on top of fish, throw that anchor out there, and not get bit, turn around and leave. I've also seen them get bit, but I'm telling you it's going to cost you fish. So a tip to help you put an extra couple fish in the boat is be stealthy. So now I found that spot. Let's say I made 10 casts, I did not get bit at all. I'm trolling motors back up, I'm on the outboard, I'm looking for the next eddy. Find the next eddy, make 10 pitches. If I get bit, I don't have to catch a fish. If I get bit this time of the year, there's more than one fish there, I guarantee it. Lower that anchor. Now we're going to work that area with jigs, just as I mentioned to you, okay? The Willy Wannabe, it took the tip right off of that, something made it off there. So you're going to work that jig painfully slow. Now, we've located those fish, we're going to jig them. If they're in an area where it has current coming into it, that's ideal because now you've got an area with no current, little to no current. You've got a food source, current bringing the food source into you, and you're going to sit up there and you're going to work on those fish. The other thing you want to look for is depth. You want more depth, and that's all relative to the water you fish. Depth could be 6 to 8 feet. It could be 12 to 15 feet. It could be 25 feet. It's all relative to what's around you, okay? If there's if the majority of the water's 3 to 5 feet deep, and I got a 6 to 7 foot hole, that's a good place to look for those small ones. Okay, as the water begins to warm up, those fish are going to start getting a little more active, okay? Now I'm going to look for those fish close to where that wintering hole was. However, I'm going to look to the shoreline. And you think about it, it's common sense. A shoreline is going to be shallower, therefore it's going to warm quicker. As that water warms, it's going to warm the mud, the crustaceans will get moving, insects get moving, the bait fish will be in there in the warm. Well, if the bait's there, the fish are going to follow. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bulk that bait up a little bit, okay? The water's getting a little bit warmer, fish are going to be a little more active, so I can bulk that bait up. So I said we're looking for them on shorelines close to the areas that are wintering holes. The great thing about wintering holes, gang, if you find them, those fish are going to be there year after year. Unless a flood comes in and changes something drastic, those fish will be there year after year, which is really a nice pattern. The other thing is, unfortunately, you're not going to get as many bites as you do when the water temperature is warmer. So I tell the clients, you're dragging that bait, as soon as something feels different, set the hook. It might feel like grass, it might feel like leaves, whatever it is, set the hook. We buy our jigs by the hundred. I'd rather lose a jig than have you miss a fish. And I can't tell you how many times, virtually every time in cold water fishing, we'll be jigging and I'll hear this. I'll just turn around, smile, and say, that was a fish, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a fish. Set the hook. It's going to feel different. So we're fishing this shoreline, let's say. Why? We already talked about it. The water warmed up, the insects are in there, the fish are moving in there to feed. So I'm on my trolling motor again. And now what I'm doing is I'm pitching to the shoreline, and all I got to do, because I'm in current, is raise my rod tip. So I'll raise my rod tip, the current moves it. Raise my rod tip, the current moves it. I don't have to reel each time. I'm raising my rod tip and the current's moving it. I do want to keep it taut, because if there's slack in it, that subtle bite, you're not going to feel it. So raise your rod tip to the point that the current's moving it, and you'll let that rod come all the way, raising it, lower, raising it, lower, raising it, lower. Now it's hanging out the back of the boat. Just let that bait hang there for about 30 seconds. You don't get bit, bring it in, and bring it in fast. Bring it in fast serves two purposes. Number one, you get it to the boat quicker, you can get more casts in a day. Number two, we're looking for those fish to tell us something. Sooner or later, as you're bringing it in, you're going to see a fish swirl at it at the boat. When they do that, that just told you something else. They're getting more aggressive. All right, now we're going to go to a bigger bait. Bigger bait, we can fish a little bit faster. Once we see that happening, what we want to do now is, especially if we're in the low 40s, I want to put on a stick bait. And primarily, I like to throw suspending baits. Things like the Rapala X-Wrap, Lucky Craft Pointer, Smithwick Road, things of that nature. Now, a suspending bait has a neutral buoyancy, so you crank it down, then you just let it sit there in the current, let it go back and forth. Sometimes I'll even modify, the X-Wraps always have feathers. Sometimes I'll modify my pointers and the roads and things like that to add a feather. Now the hooks are cut, so it might sit a little bit funny. I did put some suspendats on there, so hopefully it's going to be fine. So basically we're going to throw that bait out there. You want to crank it down and just let it sit there in the current. Just let it waddle out there. If nothing happens, maybe give it a jerk. Okay? Maybe a jerk, pause. In cold water, the longer the pause, the better. So you can make a big sweep with a long pause. So there's various cadences you can do. As the water warms, you're definitely going to want to be working that bait more. For instance, my favorite cadence, I like to get it down like the jerk, pause. Jerk, pause. Jerk, pause. That's what I like to do. When I have clients in the boat, too many times they'll catch a fish and I'll say, what was your retrieve speed? I don't know, he just did it. What was your cadence on the jerkbait? I don't know. So what I want to encourage you to do is make 10 casts with whatever cadence you're comfortable with. The first cadence, if you're a jerk, pause guy, do 10 of those. That's going to cause you to keep your head in the game because you're going to be saying, there's cast number 5, there's cast number 6, there's cast number 7. And you can go with whatever rule you want, whether it's 5 casts, or 10 casts, 8 casts, I don't care. Just set that as a goal for yourself so that it keeps your head in the game. As we've already talked about, our time is limited, so we want to be productive when we're out there, as productive as possible is. So that's what you want to do with your cadence. Whatever the cadence is, pay attention to it, and those fish are going to tell you, I want a long pause, I want a jerk with a short pause, I want a steady retrieve. They'll tell you what they want to do. We've got some video on our website that shows you some of the trips we've done. And another tactic I do when we're jig fishing in this cold weather is we'll be jig fishing, all right? And I'm going to have a stick bait hanging out the back. I'm going to throw it out there, I'm going to crank it down, it's going to be sitting in a rod holder. There's a video on there I did with Winco Custom Lures. I had a trip planned, and the client calls me at 5 o'clock and he says, I'm sick, man, I can't go. I'm like, that's okay, the boat's hooked up, I'm going. I went to a whole new location, and I wanted to spend the day just experimenting with Winco Lures. And I was very pleased with them, they worked very well. These fish didn't let me show it to you, but that tail will stand up and just sit there for you. But what I did is on that video, that rod's in the back of the boat as I'm jigging. That rod with that stick bait caught 6 extra fish that day just by hanging out the back there, waving in the current. And the biggest fish of the day was a 20 1/4, and that's how we took it. So it's, as I said, in cold weather, it's not, you don't want to overwork the bait. So that's a tactic with a stick bait that can work very well for you. Now the water continues to warm. Let's say we get pushing 50 degrees. Those fish, once again, they're going to relocate. And now I'm going to start looking for them moving towards the spawning bed. I like to look at grass islands, the backs of islands, gravel flats, places like that. And a great search bait, a great bait to land these fish, and a great manufacturer is Sick Custom Baits. A spinnerbait is a lure. You can fish it in any color water, any depth, and it's a very versatile bait. You can fish it rapidly. Whoa, watch out, Phil. So one of the things I do when the water's warm is I like to wake it on top. You may not see that down there, but it creates a V and a bubble right on top. So you can use your spinnerbait up on top. You can let it sink a little bit. You kind of bring it back, in the middle of the water column. Another technique that's great is to yo-yo it. Let that thing hit bottom, raise it up, let it fall. Raise it up, let it fall. Okay, so we call that yo-yoing a spinnerbait. You can slow roll these things. You can let them get to the bottom, and then just slow roll it so that it's just ticking the bottom. We were out fishing one day, and I look in the back of the boat. The guy in the back of the boat's pulling one of these. Everybody familiar with that? You throw bait casters? What's that called? Backlash? Do you know the pros don't get backlashes? Do you believe that? No? I'll tell you why they don't. If they don't get backlashes, they get professional overload. So he's back there and he's picking away at it. And I'm kind of chuckling to myself. And we're having a pretty good day catching fish on spinnerbaits. And once he gets that out, he goes to reel it in. Boom, he had a fish on there. Once again, the fish just told us something. Slow it down. Even though we were catching fish at a medium retrieve, we slowed it down, started slow rolling off the bottom. It helped us add a few more fish. It seemed like the bite started to come faster when we did that. So once again, that's another great lesson for you. We talked about these using a spinnerbait as a very versatile bait. Like I said, you can cover the various levels of the water column with it. You can throw different speeds. And another great thing is in stained or muddy water. Or, where you at, JT? When else do these work good? Nighttime. If you guys can get out on the water at night, there's an incredible bite out there happening, and this bait is a wonderful bait that'll work for that. Chuck, you said you were offering a special for the show?
Yeah, everybody that attends the seminar, they get 10% off all the baits.
Okay, for those of you who might be interested in these spinnerbaits, hook, line, and sinker, 2700 mile. They're offering 10% off for anybody that attends the seminar and goes down and says hello and buys a bait. Now, I like to use a polymer knot on my spinnerbaits. I'm just using a simple clinch knot now. At least I hope to. And but this bait here has a Colorado blade on it, and we're going to talk about colors and so forth later in the seminar. But you'll see this Colorado blade is going to give you a lot more vibration, so it's going to be thumping. And that's important in dirty water or nighttime fishing because that's your least optical conditions for bass, so therefore they're feeling with their lateral line. And that's more how they're going to hone in on the bait. So again, this is a SICK custom spinnerbait made right here in Pennsylvania. You can throw these spinnerbaits right into a grass bed. You can throw them around trees. I'm not saying you're not going to get hung up, but you're going to be surprised at how well they do come through timber and grass, and things of that nature. They can deflect off a lot of things without harm. What's so special about these baits is they're made with a thin wire, 028, right? And that thin wire is going to give you a lot more vibration. If you go to our website, you can actually see a video we shot with these baits. Every fish you catch, you might have to tune this bait a little bit, mess with your wire a little bit, just put it down in the water, drag it to you, make sure she's running true, and get right back out and whack some more. They also put flasher glue on these. Gives it another unique look that many baits don't have. Okay, once the spawn's done, things can get very difficult. I'm still going to look for fish around grass beds. And a bait that works fantastic is a wacky rig worm. Now wacky rig worms is basically, you're hooking it in the center. I'm still fishing that braided line, and what I do is I use an O-ring, because being 50 like I am, I can get more fish per bait that way. Bass Pro Shops has a real handy tool. Basically, it looks like a little baseball bat. Slide that worm in there. There's O-rings at the bottom. Slide that O-ring up, roll it onto your bait, and it's on there for you. I don't like it so much for the application, but it's a really handy way to keep your O-rings without losing it. So, I like these tools. Winco Custom Lures actually makes a worm for wacky rigging that has the O-ring built into it. So you don't even have to mess with the exterior O-ring. If you go to Winco Lures on their website, notice the fall on this thing, how it just floats down there. For lethargic fish, for fish that are really pressure spooked, fish coming off the spawn, this is very tantalizing to them. But if you go to Winco's website, he actually has videos there, shows you how he rigs the lures, shows them in a swimming pool, shows you how they work, things like that. So it's I encourage you to go to his website. The baits are great, they work very well, and it's very informational as well. So I fished this worm weightless. That's going to slow that fall, and again, around grass, it works very well. This is a great bait for kids. In the summertime, those fish are going to be scattered. They can be anywhere. So you want to cover a lot of water in the summertime. And you're going to be fishing things like crankbaits, rebel weed crawl, big O's, things of that nature that I even fish a rattle bait that time of year because I'm covering a lot of water fast. And while you're doing that, if you've got kids in the boat with you, it's a great bait. Let them throw this wacky worm out there, let it come along. They're going to catch decent fish on it, and they're not going to get hung up as much. And fishing the Susquehanna River, that's real important with kids. Let them fish something that they're not going to get snagged a lot. When you take a kid fishing, remember, you're taking a kid fishing. You want them to have a good time, and they're not going to have a good time if they're not getting bit, if they're not catching fish, and if they're getting hung up all the time. You're going to get aggravated, they're going to be aggravated, it's going to be a poor experience. And we really need to do better with our kids and get them involved in the outdoors. So that's another great bait. You can see how they love that. You go there, buddy. In the summertime, typically the water's low and clear. Even more important to be stealthy. We were having we do corporate outings as well. And one time, one of our boats was struggling. And so he called me up, and I had some fish located in a location, and I explained to him where it was, and all of a sudden I started yelling, "No, no, no!" And my client's like, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, "Well, I just sent him to where some fish are, and he just drove right over top of them." So he got in there, they fished it for about 15 minutes, thought I was full of crap and left. So I told my clients, I said, "We'll give it about 20 minutes, and we'll go in there." We went in there with a different stealthful approach, and we pulled 8 fish out of there. So you got to be stealthy. Summertime, low and clear, it's critical. I've seen fish spook from a wake, from a boat 100 yards away, and that wake got to the shoreline, fish spooked before I even saw them. So they will spook. The other thing you want to do, now this is a cotton cordell spot, pretty abused, it's been hammered. But these rattle baits, they're great in stained water because they have a rattle in them. Excalibur makes what they call a one knocker, which only has like 1 BB in there, so it's not as aggressive. And I like to yo-yo that bait. This doesn't have the hooks on it either, so it's not sinking like it should. But you'll see they have a nice tight wobble to them, gives off vibration, and it's a bait like the spinner bait that you can throw a lot and you can cover a lot of water with it. Another thing it's great to throw in the summertime is topwater. There's I like to throw the Excalibur Zell Pop. Pop wire, very similar, Winco Splash It. They're a great bait to throw. There's various ways to fish it. What I like to do is throw the bait out there. You won't be able to see it on top, so I'll just explain it to you. Throw the bait out there, and that's going to create ripples. When those ripples come out about 3 feet and they start to dissipate, I'm going to pop it one time. And I'm going to wait. If nothing hits it, then I'm going to start my gauge back to the boat. If in fact a fish blows up on that bait, follow it up with that dinger, a tube, anything of that nature. Just go right to that spot, and a lot of times you're going to catch that fish. In the summertime, we said low and clear. If you can find an area that's got a spring that might lower that water temperature a degree or two, that's a good place to surf. Anywhere that's introducing oxygen, be it a log, a ledge, a boulder, anything that's introducing oxygen, that's a good place to start on these smallies. What you want to do is set up below them. So many times I'll see guys drifting back over top of their fish. And in clear water, in the summertime, high sky, lots of shadows and stuff, that's not the best approach that time of the year. Let's face it, those fish are going to be positioned with their heads upriver because they're looking for the food to come to them. And if you're drifting down over them, sometimes you're going to spook them before you get that bait to them. So I always, if I've got a target area with a ledge introducing water that's creating bubbles, introducing oxygen, I'm going to stealthily come up from downriver. I'm going to chuck that bait above the target area, bring it through the ripples, kill it, let it fall into the deeper pocket there, and then work it back to the boat. It's critical to have a trolling motor sized for your boat. The other thing is, I would not go less than a 24-volt system. I use a 101/36 volt on mine, but we use ours really hard, all kinds of current. But a 24-volt system is going to give you more time on the water. Our time's critical. I used to do it before I was a guide. I would want to conserve battery. I don't want to burn out my battery. It's too early to do that. I don't want to burn out my battery. So I was compromising my fishing techniques to save batteries. That doesn't make sense, guys. Your window of opportunity is so short. Be prepared. Burn that battery up. Go after them fish hard. Pay attention. Put as many in the boat as you can. Don't compromise what you're doing there. Another great bait to throw, once we get out of summertime and into winter, is a hair jig. There's a guy over here in Enola, Myers Custom Jigs. He'll tie any pattern you want, any color you want, any size you want. And a jig, it's the same deal. Any jig, braided line, fluorocarbon leader. When I'm throwing that spinnerbait, I'm throwing anywhere from 12 to 17 pound fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon has a lot of abrasion resistance, and again, as we talked about, it's less visible to the fish. Once we get out of that summer pattern and we get into the fall pattern, those fish are going to start schooling together again. So it's another great time, like spring, to catch your personal best smallmouth. Beautiful time to be on the water. It's comfortable. It's not like being out here in the wintertime. A jig's a good way to go. That rattle bait is a good search bait. A swim bait can be a good bait. And again, once you find those fish, then you want to anchor on them. How do we anchor? Slowly, steadily. Don't be splashing that anchor. Once you anchor on those fish and you start working them, they may not be sitting in slack water just yet. So they're probably going to be out on current edges. So anchor there, fish, let your bait come out of slack water into that current break, and a lot of time that's when they're going to nail it, right on that current break. Same deal, let it hang out the back, you know, maybe 30 seconds, nothing happens, bring it in. Pay attention to what the fish are doing, they'll tell you what they want. Let's say we catch a few fish here, and they stop. Change your color. Change your type of jig. Don't leave that spot thinking, oh, we caught them all. Because that time of the year, they're ganging up again. If in fact you don't catch a fish, take your line, Leave out about 10 feet. I just pull 3 poles, about 3 feet a pop, retie it off. I drifted the boat. I can still fish that same hole, but it's a little bit different angle. Another thing, we fish custom built boats. I got my cleats back a little bit farther than the average. The reason for that is I can take that rope, tie it on this cleat, I can get about a 10-yard swing. So I never lifted that anchor, I never spooked fish. I've got 10 yards this way, I can fish them same fish with a little bit different angle. Same deal. I can do the same thing on this side, it's going to swing the boat that way about 10 yards. I carry anywhere from 50 to 100 foot of rope, and the majority of my fishing is in 3 to 8 foot of water. The reason for that is, again, I can leave out line, and I can fish a large area of water without ever lifting that line or anchor and spooking those fish. I had a classic example out with a guy. It was a New Year's Eve, I think about 2 years ago. We had a warm spell come in. So we found some fish on a shoreline. We went in there, anchored. I think he caught 6, and they stopped biting on it. I said, where are we going? I said, where? And he said, where's the next spot? He said. I said, well, hang on. And I did that trick. I let line out. He picked up another one. Okay, where are we going? Put on a different color. Got another one. I swung the boat. He picked up like 8 extra fish without ever picking up that anchor. And he was going to run from that spot. So when they're schooled up, try different colors, different sizes, different retrieves. Before you leave them fish, make sure you exhaust a couple different things. Okay, I'm going to come down here. I'll answer any questions you might have. And if you are going to pull out before you leave, I'd like to ask you to do 2 things. Number 1, no matter what your political affiliation is, I encourage you to support our troops. We got men and women who leave their families, leave this country, and go to defend us, provide the liberties we have, so that we have the freedom to do all the things we do. So please support our troops. And number 2, I want to encourage you to take a kid in the outdoors. I don't care if it's hunting, fishing, biking, camping, get them in the outdoors. We got too many kids spending too much time with their face on electronics. We need to change that. We got a big thing going on with obesity in our country, the adults and the children alike. And I think if we can get them in the outdoors, it's going to help with that. My name's Brad Bates. God bless you. Thank you for your time. Knock them down. I'll be glad to answer any questions. We have a nice Plano display here for you. I can show you some of the things we use. Thank you for your time. So basically put it in the holder. And again, you don't have to use a holder. I like it just because it keeps my openings up so I don't lose it. The Winco custom lures, he actually has a built-in, which
you put your hook in there and you go between the arm and the
no, I do that.
Okay.
Now, you can skin hook it if you want, but again, that's going to ruin the integrity of the hook. And with the price of synchros, getting 6 fish out of the 1 versus 2 is going to be valuable. That's
You never use any weight with it?
no, if I was going to do it, I would maybe spike shot or something. It depends on the current. If the current's too fast, it's going to keep it too high over the water.
What's your favorite colors?
Remember, I like greens. Well, if it's real here, and the water clarity. I'm sorry, I want to talk about that. Basically, clear the water, more opaque you want the thing to be, or more natural, exactly. Clear the water, that's the best optimal conditions for the fish, so they can see further. In stained water, I want to put something more vivid, maybe some chartreuse or some dark color. In muddy water, I want to put black, or June bug, things of that nature. Like if you're outside at night, even though it's dark and you have a hard time seeing on the ground, you look up in the sky, you'll see a color from it, because it's silhouetted against the sky. Same deal, if I've got brown water and I've got a black bait here, it's going to be more visible to fish. I'm going to throw in a spinnerbait, through that Colorado lake, it's going to have more thumb. They're going to be feeding because of the vibration of the lateral line, so they'll feel that vibration. I always fish scents, even though my baits are scented. I use Yums F2, it's live prey technology, LPT they call it. I spray that on there, and that helps if you're fishing too. The lateral in there. Okay, so anything in muddy water that'll help you because it's least optimal conditions you can possibly be. In clear water, there's a catch. You want to fish as fast as you possibly can. So when they don't take a quick look at that bait, you know it's not for real.
Or you just
right? Because they can see it.
Are you with it?
However, if you're fishing too fast, the temperature, you're defeating your purpose because you're not going to chase them. So it's a fine line there. You want to fish fast, but the water temperature is if you see one move a little bit, he pulls off early, that's way too fast. If he's following you pretty close, you're almost there. But you can see him, especially with this catfish. Clear water, longer casts. I like to use, an 8-foot rod to get more distance. And that braided line will also give you more. What was the name of the distance? 27. Use that for the purpose. Are you guys able to see the difference? Braid with fluoro. You want to see that?
You use a heavier test on spinner bait?
I do. Okay. My rattle baits. Heavier baits, I use heavier test.
How long do you use?
No less than 2 foot. Here's the thing with the leader. I'm tying a back-to-back uni. Every time you bring that knot in, it's coming through your eyelid. So it's nice to have a longer one. You don't have to tie it as much, but it's getting more abuse. So a 3-footer, I can still cast with it. I'm not bringing it through the eyelid all the time. So it's really a matter of preference. But don't fish anything less than 2 foot to defeat your purpose.
You say you use uni knots on those lines, double uni knot, or
I use a back-to-back uni knot when I tie my lines together. However, in cold weather, when you lose dexterity because you're handling cold fish and they don't want to work, there's a product called This is made out of the same material as fluorocarbon. Okay? And what's great about this is it's a swivel, but it's not metal. So if I bend it, you can put it back to its original shape. I can bend it either way, okay? Bend it like that. Also, it's not going to rust, okay? It's not quite neutral buoyancy, so it's not going to affect the way the whole line. Yeah, that's very hard. Yeah. So, which I didn't have this in the book. There's a little hole right here. See how there's 2 nubs on the top? So you bring your line through that hole, tie a clinch knot, something that's easier to tie than a back-to-back uni, especially when the wind back-to-back uni is hard. Use a clinch knot on both ends, you got the same deal. Okay? So now you're not dealing with the back-to-back uni, this product will work for you. In the summertime, when I'm fishing a wacky great worm, you're going to get a lot of line twists. A Rebel weak roll with the casting gets a lot of line twists. A swim bait, like a fluke or something, weightless, that's going to get a lot of line twists. Any bait that get a lot of line twists, you want to use a leader. I'm using fluorocarbon. You get them from Aquatico in Florida, where I have them here at the show. I'll give you a sample. They come in various weights. I fish, this is a 35. I fish 25 pound only because it's easier for me to see. The smaller ones have also tight out problem.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay? What do you want to, how old are the kids?
15 and 12.
Okay. Bass fishing, when are they coming in?